Welcome back. Donald Trump has been elected the 47th President of the United States of America after serving as the 45th between 2016 and 2020 and surviving very many dramatic events in his career over the last couple of years. What does his election mean for global peace and indeed for America, the United States of America, and the entire world? Let's have this conversation. And joining us this morning is Dr. Peter Adeyanju. He is a lecturer, Department of Sociology, Faculty of Social Sciences, University of Abuja. Good morning, and thank you for joining us, Doctor.
Good morning. Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here this morning.
It's good to have you. We'll start with your immediate reactions to Donald Trump's dramatic election victory, but perhaps you also want to speak to what seems to be an early call of this election, unlike what transpired in 2020.
Yes, very uniquely and very remarkably. One of the arguments in 2020's election was actually the advent and the occurrence of the COVID-19. The COVID-19 actually accounted for why the 2020 election in the US was very unique and why the early call of this particular 2024 was also unique. In 2019, it was obvious that there are so many mails and ballots that came in after the November the 5th. And as such, most of the states actually argued why there shouldn't be an early call and then assenting to all of the vote cast by the citizens. So this actually accounted for the delay compared to the 2024 and the previous elections in the US. And actually in the 2020's election, that's the basis for Donald Trump's argument in relation to why should America look like, to his word, a third world country. Meaning that at least America should have maintained that culture, one, of ensuring that either or not, there should not be anything that should influence or affect the early call for the declaration of the President of the United States. So that's actually the uniqueness. In 2020, the COVID-19 affected or influenced the number of mails and ballots that came in, as well as the number of votes compared to the early votes and those that voted thereafter. So much of the members of the college could not actually be assembled on time. So that was the major reason there was a delay and there was a challenge. And there were also major issues arising from that election. For this 2024, you can actually agree with me, there was no instance or causes for any reason to delay. As all the states cast their votes, all early votes that comes in, and all of the electronic machines work effectively. So obviously, there was an early call for the declaration, and then you can see how the 270 was actually arrived at. Thank you very much.
Yeah, doctor. So let's look at we're going to look at things within the Americans, within the American community, as well as how it affects us. So let's stay in America. What do you think Donald Trump did right with the Republican Party and Kamala Harris did wrong with the Democratic Party? Because the issue of gender, the issues that are being raised. Some people say Trump is not too familiar with his policies. Trump is not really, he aligns with the conservative ideology, not necessarily about himself. So what do you think exactly played out here? What did Donald Trump do right to make this big comeback as against what Hillary Clinton, why am I going back to Hillary? Kamala Harris did wrong in the Democratic Party? Is it that the campaign started late, or Joe Biden should have left off scenes, or Joe Biden should have run? Well, just walk us through what was wrong politically for the Democratic Party.
Okay, let's look at also the platform under which they run. For Donald Trump, in reality, he is a man who often esteem his own personality beyond the office of the president as to the required personality of the office of the president. His personality speaks volume. Okay, he's a man that finds it so easy to express his mind, not minding the office he holds. And then even the fact that he is also a nominee for the Republican before being declared now. Again, his personality overwhelmed his public image. Okay, so you can't deny that fact about him. So for him, what he actually did that actually paid off for him was the fact that he's outspoken on addressing
Dr. Peter, are you there?
issues of in the past. Okay? And then in the case of Kamala Harris, the very funny thing about her is that, yes, we can't also deny the fact that, but the fact that Biden didn't actually make it any declaration about her becoming Democrats was actually a minus too, because presumably, if she was the one who had the first interaction with Donald Trump, maybe that would have given her an edge. But there was an initial, public debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, so that gave the Republican the plus. Again, for Kamala Harris again coming on board, yes, the fact that she is a female nominee, the gender politics actually was and should have been a plus for her, and actually that was a big plus for her anyway, considering the amount of patronage that she had. Again, one of the things that actually again was not to her advantage was the fact that she cannot insulate herself from the current dispensation of the leadership of the current democratic governance. She is on the platform with Biden, and the incidences, the occurrence of the border issue, the inflation, and all of those things was not to her own advantage, and she was not able to manage them well in the public space. She was not able to provide a justified. It's difficult. She would really want to speak to those issues factually, but that will also mean that she is actually castigating Biden. So she doesn't want to look like that. You can imagine when Biden had to use a word in a public space, and she had to come to the same public space and say that she takes a different opinion and that she differs from the president's opinion. Now, in an attempt to want to speak to some of these issues, issue relating to the migration at the border, the issue of inflation, and all of these things, if she speaks open to advance her own ideology, as against the fact that she's also holding an office with Joe Biden, will also send a wrong signal. So those things actually spoke against her invariably. Even the independent voters could not actually insulate her, could not actually make a case for her. So that gave Donald Trump a hedge. Thank you.
It still defies logic. And one of the things that defies logic about Donald Trump's election win is that he's the first criminal defendant to be elected to the office of the President of the United States, besides the other cases at the state level that are currently against him. As a matter of fact, reports are to the effect that he's supposed to appear before a judge for his sentencing in a matter of days or weeks in this November. So the question is, what happens to his conviction on felony, having been elected, and to the other cases? And doesn't he place really a moral burden on the office of the President of the United States of America? And why do you think Americans look past this and still elected him?
Thank you very much. I think in a public space like this, we are at liberty to manage the validity of our expression. Now, let me say it categorically. It will be out of context to conclude that he's actually a convict. If you look at all of the judicial proceedings, if you look at all of the court precedents, actually, again, that gave Trump a public sympathetic, vote to his own advantage. It's literally speaking in between the line. It looks more like a victimization presentation. And it will not be too correct to conclude that, again, that he is a felon. It will not be too correct, because if you look at the judgment of all the courts, and in line with those of the Supreme Court, even the Supreme Court, as at this moment, still believes that all of his actions in office is to be seen as to the office he holds, not in relation to his own personal decision. And that is why the independent jurist who is advancing some of these arguments is that, rather than looking at his decision as to the decision of the President of the United States of America, rather it should be looked at in relation to what they should look at it as his own personal decisions. Now, you cannot also conclude that way. So to me, in the US, the unique thing about the US is that whoever they choose to vote for, it is not on the basis of allegations, one. Two, that even if it is, there was a time, you can appreciate this, that even for a nominee on a ballot who was voted.
All right, Doctor, if I may butt in, my apologies, because so that we can manage time. So, it's a public arena, so let's put facts where facts should be. It was convicted, 34-count charge. That has to do with business. So as far as that is concerned, he's been convicted in the judicial system in America. That is fact. Whether he's going to appeal that and all of that is a different case. He has so many cases. Some that has to do with his presidency and the insurrection. Some has to do with his personal life in terms of business practices and hush money and all of that. But we know that particular case, he's been convicted by a competent court, and that is fact. But let's bring it home, Doctor. What lesson can we learn with the American election? The civility that we saw yesterday, we saw Harris come, and I was watching her last night. It was so graceful to see. It's not just because of Harris or Donald Trump, the way the civility of the West. We always criticize them, but this is one moment where we need to admire them. She said, look, we abide by the Constitution of America. We are not loyal to a person or a political party, but to the Constitution. And that's why she conceded, because there has to be a transition from one government to the other. So we're not going to see judges and senior advocates going to courts and all of that. Donald Trump is not maybe necessarily a great example of that, because they call him an election denier. But let's use the immediate one. What lesson can we learn in the conduct of this election? It was so quick to call, as you recognize. What can we learn as Nigeria?
Yes. One of the important lessons we have to pay attention to is the fact that our democracy should evolve. And our democracy will have to evolve. We have to integrate the unique Nigerian culture and our uniqueness into our own democracy. We mustn't practice the Western democracy, all right? Hook, line, and sinker. What that simply means, let's have value for our culture. So for me, you can see a level of advancement. And again, it would be wrong to say from the first to the second.
Hello, Dr. Peter? Oh dear, network issues. Dr. Peter, if you can hear us, you can continue. Okay, so whilst we're trying to get back and reconnect with Dr. Peter, so basically we're just trying to see what we can glean from that election as far as is concerned, because it held in November 5th. There were early polls as well, early votings that came down to 75 million votes, and then there was an election. In less than 24 hours, we had results, and we already knew who won also. Dr. Peters, are you there? We understand you're back. Oh boy. Okay, so I was saying that it's not the situation that we found ourselves in 2016 or 2020, where everybody was waiting for maybe slightly longer time, but this was quick as possible, and it was clear that this has been done and dusted. We've covered elections on channels television for many years. It's a luxury we don't have. We have to wait and wait and wait for 3 days. An average Nigerian election is called in about 3 days, and it's around midnight or early hours of the morning. Doctor, sorry, we had connection challenge with you. So now that you're back, maybe you land on your thoughts as we begin to wind down.
Yes. One of the things that we must learn is that we must make good use of technology advantage. We can see beauty, advantage of technology. Technology simplifies, all of human efforts. So that is the beauty. Okay, if we talk about, look at the last election in Nigeria. We also appreciate the fact that we now have an IREV, we have electronic machines, we have electronic means of casting our votes. That is a plus. So we should explore that to our own advantage. Okay, and reduce manual activities. Then number two, it has to do with the integrity of the political parties and the candidature themselves, the candidates. The candidates must appreciate that they need to exemplify integrity. The instance where an election is being conducted and declares an election, the electoral body declares an election, the first thing to do is to concede defeat. And if you think that you have basis, okay, of objection, there are procedures. The court is there. Avail yourself the opportunity. Go to the court. We have seen it in some nations in Africa, and we have seen it in some states here in Nigeria. And good enough, these are things we must do. We should stop putting the populace in trouble, and we should stop discrediting ourselves as a nation. So these are specific lessons we must learn. Make good use of technology to our own advantage. And in doing that, the integrity of the candidates also matters, and the political party. And we must also, as a matter of fact, begin to deconstruct money politics, money bag politics. It will not help us. It will not help us as a nation to advance. And I think these are important things we must put into perspectives. Thank you very much.
And as we wind down now, it would be remiss of us to have this conversation without talking about what the Trump victory means for U.S.-Africa relations and specifically U.S.-Nigeria relations as well. There's been a mixed bag of reactions to that effect with reference to, the support for Nigeria for the purchase of arms during the first time of Trump. But there are also worries about, the impact of his presidency on migration. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yes, the basic truth and the fact on the table is that there is no nation in this world that will not recognize Nigeria, indeed, as the giant of Africa. Now, Nigeria, we have the market. Nigeria, as of today, we're still the most populous Black nation in the whole of Africa. And again, the strength of Africa defines Nigeria's strength. So for me, the victory for Donald Trump is a positive, it's going to bring something positive to Africa. Yes, in politics, there are rooms for propaganda. And it would not be too correct to say Donald Trump is absolutely against the black. That's not correct. He has interest of the black at heart. And you see, you can't also deny the fact that the peace of Nigeria, the peace of Africa, is the peace of the United States, is the peace for the world. So at no point should America negate the contributions that will come from Nigeria. So for Nigeria, the most important thing we need to do is for our leaders, our president and the Minister for Foreign Affairs, we need to have specifics listed, scripted in our foreign policies. We should have specific things we are asking for. We don't just go to international programs or events or activities without having specifics to ask. We should be able to negotiate. When presidents of the world meet, they meet to negotiate. When you are asked to participate in an activity, you are bringing to the table and you are negotiating to your own advantage. So errors in the time past, when Nigeria goes to international events, engages with presidents of the world and not having anything to demand, those errors should be passed. So we should rejig our foreign policy to specifically begin to itemize things: our economy, health, education, culture, our politics, things that are security. We should have things, especially in the area of industry too, industrialization. There should be specifics. Let's invite them to come over to Nigeria. Let them import this technology to Nigeria. Let Nigeria be the technological hub, not only for Africa, also for the world. It's just for us to redefine specifics and then negotiate with the leaders of the world. And then before you know what's happening, we are better off than we are today. Thank you.
And that would be a fine place to leave it, particularly for our Ministry of Foreign Affairs to reflect on. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Peter Adeyanju, who joined us virtually from the FCT. He's a lecturer in the Department of Sociology, Faculty of Social Sciences, University of Abuja. And from here, we switch gears to the softer side of things. This is a conversation that you don't want to miss. There will be singing from a soldier's heart. Stay with us, we'll be right back.